Hi there makers, it's Michelle with Fabric Funhouse. A lot of you have been sending in emails asking us to kind of give you some advice on how to re-wax. We do have instructions online on the website at fabricfunhouse.com, but I wanted to take a minute and do a video to kind of demonstrate how you would take our C4X wax bar and apply it to either virgin canvas or to re-wax our wax canvas. What happens when you need to re-wax? What happens when it stops being waterproof? The way that you would tell if it's time to re-wax is if you put a little water on your make and it doesn't beat up and roll off, that's when it's time to re-wax. Most of the time you're only going to need to do that once a year, maybe more with normal usage. It depends kind of how much you're using the item. But of course, the more you're using it, the softer it gets. So the best way to tell is going to be just putting some water on it. Just keep in mind that virgin canvas, if you're waxing it for the first time, is going to require a lot more time and effort, as well as a lot more wax than you would normally use just to re-wax your item. So let's get started. I'm going to start with just a piece of regular old canvas that I got at Joann's a long time ago. And then we will continue on and show you something kind of special that maybe you didn't think about waterproofing. So I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get started. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is get our wax softened. Since C4X has a higher melting point, you're going to have to do a little extra effort to get it to soften up. You can either use a double boiler like you're melting chocolate chips on the stove top, or you can do almost boiling water and it will take a little bit longer to do it that way. So here is my regular old canvas. It has not been prepped in any way except for ironed. And I'm going to work a small surface area, taking a little at a time, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to get either a sponge or a clean cloth. I'm going to get a little bit of wax onto this sponge or clean cloth, and you want to take a little bit at a time. What you don't want to do is paint or glob it onto the canvas, and the reason for this is you don't want to waste the wax. You don't want to get a buildup because it's just going to come off as you use the canvas. So I'm rubbing it in a circular motion into the canvas fibers, and the reason you want to do that is to get every angle possible of the weave and weft. And then here is a heat embossing tool. You can use this or a hair dryer to do what I'm doing here, which is soften up the wax if it's starting to get hard and it's pilling and not absorbing into the fibers. You can just put a little heat on it and keep going. And you'll just keep doing this a little at a time. I'm going to get my heat tool again and just give it a little zap so that way it absorbs into the fibers and makes it more spreadable. And you can see that it's starting to change the color a little bit. You can see it right on the blue where my thumb is. And the reason for this is it's basically making it wet. So until it completely cures, it may deepen the shade of your fabric quite a bit. You'll notice that if you get wax cans delivered from us, occasionally this will be the case where it's two-tone, and if you hang it up overnight to dry, it will cure that wax and then it'll all be the same color the next morning. and it doesn't go through the back onto a surface, but what it will show is, you see the dark spot right here? That is the wax that's bleeding through to the other side. So if you had too much, it definitely would get on a surface underneath. I would recommend putting down something to protect whatever area you're working on, just in case. Alright, so let me show you something special. We're going to move on to something you may not think about waterproofing. I wanted to show you, because it's kind of a nice thing to be able to waterproof any kind of linen or canvas shoe that you have. This is just a pair of Toms I've worn a couple of times, but you can actually use our wax to waterproof these. I'm going to go through the whole process, but speed up some parts so that you can see, the main gist of everything. Same thing, you're going to take your cloth, you're going to put it in your wax, and you're going to start rubbing it into the surface area. With shoes or any finished make, you're going to want to concentrate on seams or stitches, any place where there's a hole to the other side, and make sure that you get that completely covered with your wax. And just be very careful when you're applying the heat. Anything that can melt or catch on fire or anything like that, you just want to make sure you're practicing, safety when you're using this. And also, be aware of where your fingers are. Keep them out of the way at all times. Hair dryers, not so much, hopefully, but I have known a hot hair dryer or two. And this is where you're really going to want to pay attention to the seams. You're going to want to work quite a bit of wax into it. It's going to take the most absorption. Oops, I got a little wrapper here. Let me get that off. And then again, I'm just going to take my heat tool, just like I did on the regular canvas. It works the same way. So I'm just going to soften it enough to make sure that I can work it into other areas, and take that cloth again and do so. And as you can see, because this didn't have wax to start with, it is time consuming, but it is definitely worth it when your shoes like this will last a lot longer. They won't get as many stains. They'll be waterproof for the most part. It'll definitely help the longevity of these items. Okay gang, well I'm going to speed this up for you, give you the abridged version, but I'm just going to keep doing this around the shoe. Okay, now that I have waxed the shoe properly, I'm going to take this super cool heat embossing tool, which puts out a lot of heat, and take that all over the shoe to make sure all the wax is absorbed, and then I'm going to check it. So all we're going to do is work our way around the shoe, making sure to concentrate and that there's no like little blobs left, that everything is absorbed, and you'll notice that it does start to change the color of the shoe quite a bit. We'll take care of that here in a little bit. Okay, now that we've melted all the wax into the fabric, you'll notice that there's some differentiation in color. The lighter areas is kind of what I'm focusing on. The dark ones are where I've gotten enough wax for it to melt into the fabric and make it look wet. Any other area that's lighter in color right now is going to be a little drier and need additional wax put into it in order to waterproof it. So I'm going to go around the shoe one more time, working wax into those specific spots. And then when I get done, we'll do a finishing touch with the heat gun. All right, now I'm going to slow it down because I wanted to make sure that you saw kind of how the color is changing. You can see that there's not as many light spots once I absorb the wax into the material, that I'm still working my way around the shoe to make sure all of these little parts are covered. And then I'll put the shoes next to each other so that you can see the differentiation in color. That will dissipate as it cures, but it could take a day or two for it to completely cure. Okay, so it's been one day since I waxed the shoe. It's been about 24 hours, and you can see that the color has been lightening, but it's still dark. It could take one more day for it to cure, but it could also stay just a shade darker than it used to be. That is one thing that does happen when you wax something like this. But yeah, all done. One shoe ready to go out into the puddles if I need to. I also wanted you to see how much wax I have left over from what I used. So this is what's left in the cup. I could probably do almost the whole other shoe with it. And then what I cut off earlier was probably about 1/8 of a bar, which still leaves me plenty to use for one or two other projects, absolutely. All right, last thing I want to show you is that it's doing what it's intended to do. So I'm putting a little drop of water on each shoe. As you can see, the right shoe is absorbing the water and the left shoe is repelling it. So it's exactly what we wanted. That shoe on the left now is going to be 4 times more waterproof than if I had done it any other way. Alrighty makers, well I hope that was an informative video for you, showing you a little bit more specifically about how to re-wax your items or wax a brand new item. So I hope that helped you out. We love getting your questions and feedback. I'm hoping to do more of these in the future. Just keep in mind that our C4X wax is a high performance wax. It does outperform other waxes in that it is petroleum and mineral oil free, it is paraffin free, it's food grade. It also is odorless completely. It will have little to no transfer, and the little is very, very little. I have not had a problem with it gumming up my machine at all. The other thing about it, which is probably my favorite thing, is that it is reactive to ambient temperature. And what that means is that when it gets warm outside, it's going to start breathing like cotton so that you won't sweat a lot if you make apparel out of it. And then when it gets cold, it's going to become completely waterproof and windproof to keep you warm and dry. So that is probably my favorite thing about it. And the reason we listed it in ounces, in case you don't know much about canvas, they're either listed by a universal numbering system, the heavier weights, or by ounce for the lighter weights. So normally an 11-ounce canvas would be some sort of number, but because it's including the wax weight, we went ahead and listed it in ounces because it is a lighter weight fabric. So it's going to have a lot of movement. It's technically, without the wax, probably like a 9.5-ounce canvas. So just so you're aware, that's kind of how it's weighted a little bit differently. But this is our cypress green. I hope you can see the color in this. And when you get your wax canvas, as you can see, there might be some fold marks. What you can do is a couple of things to help eliminate that. One of which is using the heat embossing tool like I showed you when waxing the canvas. You can also use a hair dryer in the same manner on these and just target your creases and finger press them out. You could, to eliminate all the elbow grease you would have to use to just do that, hang it up in a warm, dry environment overnight, and it will help release some of those creases where you don't have to work as hard to get them out. Anything over 3 yards, we're going to send rolled, so that's probably not an issue for that. But if you're ordering a smaller amount, just keep that in mind, okay? But the other thing that you're going to want to know is creases are part of wax canvas. It's kind of what makes it interesting. It has its own story. When it's cold, you're going to see these creases in your wax canvas and give it that antique look. But when it's warm, they'll disappear, they'll reappear, they'll disappear. It's kind of its own unique characteristic. What I personally like to do is lean into it. I actually have never released creases before my make. I press them out with my fingers, but it's kind of one of my favorite things about it for one reason only, and I'll show you. So when you are doing your make, you can just do this, and it marks your seam allowance. You don't need a chalk wheel. You don't need to, mark it with any kind of pen or anything like that. You can just do this. And then if you need to get them out, same thing. You could take this heat embossing tool right here. It'll remove it and do it again if you miss mark. So it's super easy to start your project. I know a lot of people are concerned with it not being uncreased and completely pristine, but I really haven't had an issue with that. I actually enjoy it, and I kind of just lean into it. It's part of the nature of the beast. So I hope that helps clarify some things for you. Feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions, or if you have a good idea for our next video. But I'm really happy we can do this and have this time together, and I hope that your next project goes well, and that maybe you get to use wax canvas in it. And just remember, makers, all you need is a little love and a big idea. Thanks, guys.